Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second episode of Leading the Way in RVA. My name is Casey Long. I'm the host as well as the owner of Fulfilled Coaching and Consulting. So Leading the Way in RVA, the purpose of this podcast is twofold. First, to introduce you to inspiring leaders around the greater Richmond area and to be inspired by them. And two is to be educated on a particular leadership topic and hopefully come away with some tactical tips that you can put into practice. So I'm very excited today to introduce our first guest, a dear friend of mine. We've been friends for over 25 years. He's married to my best friend, and that is Aaron McClung. Aaron is the Chief Development Officer for FeedMore. And so I'm going to turn it over to Aaron. Aaron, welcome. Thank you for being my first guest. You're someone that I'm so inspired by. I always have been. I think it's your intentionality and your care, and I think you're pretty brilliant. So I'm excited to hear from you today.
Wow. Well, thank you, Casey. I'm honored. First of all, thank you so much. I am equally inspired by you, your journey, what you're doing with your leadership podcast, what you're doing with your coaching world. It's been awesome to see that develop over the last several years. And what you just said is kind of like, I had some thoughts prepared, but I'm kind of humbled by that.
I think we're both blushing here.
Yeah, I know. Being first, it's a lot to live up to. Well, thank you.
Thank you. So I'd love to just take, as I shared, the structure of this podcast is the first half, we want to hear about you. So there's so much to learn in hearing about an inspirational leader's journey, what got you to where you are today, some of the lessons learned along the way.
Sure.
And then I know you've come with a topic. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll spend the latter half talking about a leadership topic of your choice, something that you're passionate about or something that you have been dealing with. So
Absolutely.
Would love to just hear a little bit about your journey and what's brought you to being where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, I think everything's connected. In my journey, if you will, I grew up on the Delmarva Peninsula. So for those that are in the Richmond area, that's the connection of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. So right smack in the dab of the peninsula, southern Delaware, near the beach area on a family farm. Great place to grow up. Very rural. And had an opportunity early on in my career or in my life to have a wonderful family that really inspired me in how I show up and how I think about things. And I think that's had a tremendous effect on me. And then for college, I had the opportunity to go to Virginia Tech. So go Hokies. Where I was involved with two organizations there that really had kind of reinforced the ethos and why I do what I do. One was a fraternal organization. Its motto was leadership for service through fellowship. So that has enabled me to just continue to approach life serving others and thinking about how we can better have an impact on our community. And the other one was an organization that was the regimental band of Virginia Tech.
What was your instrument?
I was play the trombone.
Nice.
So front row. So make sure I know where we were going. But the motto there was deeds, not words. And that also had an impact on me about, taking action, doing things, just don't talk about it. So while those things were a very unique time in my life, I think that has really, those mottos and the relationships and the way I thought about organizing myself and my career and our family, when I was thinking about this podcast and some of the things you were asking me, those two things were really transformational.
Family and your college experience.
Yeah, very
really
much
grounded you.
Yeah. And while I was there, Casey, I had the opportunity to take on some leadership roles and was there during a capital campaign, so fundraising. So trying to raise money for an institution to help the next generation of Hokies in that case, and make sure that university is stronger in the future. And that's where I really learned about the power of philanthropy. And didn't have much experience with that. Got a few scholarships. My first opportunity to meet a donor was through that. So that really was a humbling experience. Very grateful for that experience. And just really shaped how I think about giving back to others and wanting to make that part of my early career. And I went straight from graduation to working for the university in fundraising, and that's kind of what got me going. If you looked at my LinkedIn profile, you'd say Aaron says he connects people, money, and ideas for the greater good. And how that's manifested itself for me for a long period of time was through philanthropy and helping encourage others to think about what they can do for others, the storytelling aspects of that, being able to share the impact. So my first early career was at Virginia Tech. I spent some time at the University of Maryland up in College Park for a brief period of time. And then the bulk of my fundraising career was at the University of Richmond.
Go Spiders.
Go Spiders, yes. Had a great opportunity there, be there for a number of years and raise money for scholarships and some building projects and really special programs. And getting to interact with donors and understand what's important to them, what they're thinking about from a strategic standpoint, the issues they're wrestling with, whether it's access, making sure that people have the ability to go to college, making sure the resources are there for the next generation, making sure there's a program that's trying to tackle something that's really important to society, today and also in the future. That was just an awesome experience. And yeah.
I love that. So it sounds like service, philanthropy are at the heart of who you are and what you do. And then a big lesson learned in all of these universities was like understanding what's important to these donors, so that you can help them make the most of their money and what the impact that they want to have.
We would I spent a lot of time on that side of the house for a long time. I've also done some stuff in business, but really it's all about leverage and making an impact, creating more value than you capture, right? How do you create more value for society and organization, the community than you're able to get for yourself? But another piece of this was that I learned when I was working in industry within the Wells Fargo private bank. That was for about 4 years there. And really understanding, like when you think about philanthropy and community impact, are you giving, are you supporting something out of a sense of obligation? Are you doing it because you're passionate about that particular subject? Or are you doing it from a strategic sense? And the strategic aspects of that were really driving the conversation around what are the things you're wrestling with and how can you really focus on making a large impact versus doing something out of obligation.
That's funny. On the first episode, we talked about like the 3 foundational components of leadership, and there are 3 S's. So the first one is strategy. And I love the fact that you're talking so much about that, is being strategic and knowing like who you are, what you stand for, the impact that you want to make. And it sounds like that's your leverage when you're working with someone that wants to give back, is like, hey, not just doing it because it's an obligation, but doing it because it's tied to your greater purpose, your greater mission, your greater vision.
Yeah. And I would say an inflection point for me was, while I was always involved in philanthropy and involved in, whatever it is, I think I would say probably the first half of my life, first half of my career, professional career, was really about, viewing myself through the eyes of others. Is thinking about, am I successful? Am I moving up? Am I taking on more leadership? And there's a great columnist who I really, really admire, and I love his writing, David Brooks. And there was a book that came out a couple years ago called The Second Mountain.
Yes.
And this is one of my favorite because it really was an inflection point for me to think about, how you think about your life in the moment and then also in the future. And the whole ethos, the whole purpose of that book was to have you think about the first half of your life is around, by this age, I want to do X. I want to have this. I want to do whatever this is, professionally and personally. That mountain is that first half of your career. And whatever that is, you're getting there, you're on top of the mountain, you're looking around, and you look and see, oh, there's another mountain over there. I've reached the pinnacle of what I thought was important. And you may feel some feeling of unfulfillment. You may be unfulfilled in some capacity. And the point of the book is really the second half of your career in life is around servant leadership. That's how I interpreted that. And doing stuff for others, or using your own talents and abilities to really serve others. And that sense of fulfillment is really about the sense of community. And that's, where I am now. I'm at FeedMore, and then the last 3 years, I'm currently the chief development officer and in charge of raising money for that organization, helping transform how we're able to make an impact in the Central Virginia region. And that book had so much influence on me 4 or 5 years ago. That's why I'm in that role today.
Yes, I love that book. I read that book not even with you telling me about it. I forget why. Somehow
Yeah.
I love to read personal development books. And then the other week here in Richmond, when maybe a month or so ago, when the power went out and so many because of the ice storm, my parents came over because we have a generator, and my dad loves to read, and they were like sitting around not knowing what to do with themselves, and I gave him that book. And he's just absolutely, he's 80, right? And
Yeah.
he's just loving that book. So I love that so much of what you're doing now is focused on community and service and philanthropy. It's like you're very aligned to your values,
Yeah.
which is another component that we talked about in the foundation of great leadership strategy. And one of the components of that being values.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are today. Feed More. I know my kids and I have gone to many, like I think the Chesterfield Food Bank for the most part, and passed out food. And it is such a huge need. And so thank you. It it warms my heart to know that you are the person that is driving such important work in that space
Well,
here.
I happen to be there. We have a very generous community, and that's one of the things that it's being reinforced is the interconnectedness. I had the opportunity to talk with a number of CEOs a couple of days ago that came to our facility that were there for a United Way meeting, and just the web, the interconnected web of philanthropy and those that are looking to help each other. Really speaks to the strength of our region, and anything we can do to reinforce that, I just think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. All right. So thank you for sharing your story. I've known you for 25 years. I learned things I didn't know before. So I am so thankful for that.
Sure.
And now throw it on me. What's our topic? What are we going to dive into?
I think, for what I just said, passion and purpose is for me. There's some other stuff that probably everyone's wrestling with. I've been thinking about what to share that would be of any interest to anybody. But for me, there's three things. It's basically using yourself for the benefit of others. That's what I was talking about with David Brooks, the book, The Second Mountain, that servant leadership. And that can manifest itself for people in so many different ways. But for me, there's a couple things. I grew up in a Methodist church, Methodist house. So there's a great quote, I think it's attributed to John Wesley, that says, "Let me do all the good I can to all the people I can, as often as I can, for I shall not pass this way again." So basically, in the moment, doing what you can and being exhausted at the end of that for other people. And there's a really long George Bernard Shaw quote, very different philosophy, but about using yourself up for the expense of others, being at the end of your life, just being you, like getting all the juice from the squeeze, right?
Yes.
And it's a great quote. I'll put it in some of the show notes about this. But and then I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan, sort of that man in the arena. It's not the critic who counts; it's the one who kind of steps into the fray and doing the work. His quote was "Get action." So for me, sort of while I like to think and be a sort of an armchair philosopher, it's that action orientation, I think, for me, that sort of drives me. And those are as I was thinking about this, those are sort of the guiding principles, and other folks can articulate this so much better than I can, but those are the ones that resonate with me. Back to that alignment, what do I see in the community where there are needs, and identifying those other resources, as I say, connecting people, money, and ideas for the greater good. That's what just personally drives me. And if I find ways to do that, there's a sense of fulfillment. There's that self-actualization. If you're thinking about Maslow's hierarchy, at that top, it's like, how do you get self-actualized? For me, that's what does it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that you brought this topic of passion and purpose.
Sure.
Because this is so at the heart of
Yeah.
my business and what I strive to help others do. And I'll tell you an interesting story on that note. So I'm in the second year of my business. At the end of my first year, I took some time to just reflect on my business. And I hit the financial goals that I'd set for myself. And that felt really good. And I had put time bounds around that, like how much I wanted to be working, how much I wanted to be earning. And I hit it. And at the same time, I was like, there's something missing. Why don't I feel as fulfilled as I should?
Right.
With this. And so I went to build out my strategy for 2025. And in thinking about it, so I talked in the first session about strategy, and we have our mission, like what we get up and do every single day, and then our vision of like the ultimate destination, and then our values. And as I was thinking about vision, I have the vision for my business, which I shared before, which is all about supporting leaders and teams and organizations and being their best selves in service of them, reaching their goals and living a fulfilling life. But for me personally, what came up for me, and I've shared one of my values is faith. I grew up in the Christian faith. It's really a big piece of who I am. But my personal vision came out to be showing up at the pearly gates and being told, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the word you didn't say there, but I know we've talked about before, is authenticity. And I think anybody who knows you would say you're extraordinarily authentic.
Oh.
Right. And I think that's part of leadership, and the passion and purpose is, embracing who you are. And that's something, I mean, frankly, I think I've tried to embrace that so much more today than I did when I was growing up. I think everyone kind of lives in different bubbles and stuff, and really identifying that ego and kind of suppressing some of the negative parts of that, and just being authentic to how you should be in community with others. But I really, really resonate with what you were just saying there.
Oh, thank you. And I think authenticity, like being an authentic leader, is so important. And I think you're that. And I appreciate you saying I am that. I think something I've learned over the years too is like, yes, be authentic, be you, live into your values, live into your mission, live into your vision. But when it comes to style, yes, authentically be you, but also like you've got to be aware enough to adapt to meet other people where they are. Right. Like I find myself sometimes I'm so authentic that probably piss some people off because I'm not, and historically I have not paused to think about how do I adapt to meet other people where they are in their authentic style.
There's a great quote, and I don't know, it's an ancient quote, or paraphrasing, but you think about this. I'm not who I think I am, right? And I'm not who you think I am, but I am who I think you think I am.
Oh, Aaron, that was confusing.
It's just mind blowing. But in terms of like who, the great question: who am I? Why am I here? Right? The sense of why, the Simon Sinek, like what's the purpose of why? And I think what you were just describing about that authenticity is, do we show up differently for different people? And of course we adapt, right? Are you a constant chameleon, or are you trying to meet that person where they are, which can be authentic in the sense of trying to be in communion with that person, or being, getting on the same page, but also knowing who you are. And I think sometimes that can be a challenge. And it's like that meme, like, what does my mom think I do? What do my kids think I do? What does my spouse think I do? It's the same job, but people view that very, very differently.
They have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think what you're getting at, that's so much at the foundation of what I do, is like the more self-aware we are of who we are, what we stand for, what's important to us, the more grounded we can be in connecting with others, because we already know who we are. So we're not spending all our time when we're connecting with others worrying about how we're showing up. We're able to like fully give our attention to the person across from us.
I mean, ancient wisdom, Confucius, know thyself, right?
Yes. This is why I say he's brilliant. He's just packed full of all this.
Well, we're not getting the movie quotes. We can do that next.
I hear you're quite I've always known this. I remember like 20 years ago playing Trivial Pursuit or something. Now you're into the trivia at Wong's Tacos.
Hey, we're gonna win one of these days.
I love that. Any final thoughts on passion, purpose, authenticity?
Yeah, just the alignment of for those that I would say just read. I love reading about ideas and events and people, right? So I think the highest order of stuff is ideas. And that's what I love about your podcast, about what's that idea. Sometimes people can learn that through events. I like reading books about historical, things, and then the people behind them. Right now I'm reading the rise and fall of the Third Reich, interesting perspectives. But I like to understand kind of how things happened and the philosophy behind things to explain how things are happening today in your own life. So I would say for people, find a good podcast. I think I can think of one right now that I'd probably subscribe to. But make those part of your habits. Make that part of your daily routine or your weekly routine, and journal. I love taking time, but take time for yourself to do that, because otherwise you get caught up in the rat race and you don't have time to think and ascribe those ideas and then look at your schedule, or those things lining up with your values. And are you feeling like you're not aligned, right? Identifying where you're spending your time, and if it's the doom scrolling and that kind of stuff, and you're not reading, you're not thinking, you're not having conversations. That's some things that easy wins to kind of just reorient, and I think that's pretty healthy.
Yeah, what you're saying is resonating based on something that popped in my head this morning is making sure you're taking time to work on yourself or on the business rather than in the business, right? And so carving out sacred time to read a certain book, journal, listen to the podcast, connect with people. It also makes me think, somebody said, like, the two ways you learn is through either reading or like through other people, right? So being intentional with taking that time. And I think that's so much of the value that a coach provides, is it's this accountability to block an hour of your time every couple of weeks to like truly just focus in on you and who you are and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So it's a big piece of the value that coaching provides.
I think coaching is invaluable. And I would say a lot of people have a hesitation about being vulnerable to somebody else they might not know initially, but I think it's probably the safest place. And I can say categorically the most effective I've been as a leader, or, whatever term you want to say, has been when I've been going through a proactive coaching experience, trying to, when I got promoted or, taken on a new role, reaching out to somebody that in a professional sense and spending an hour a week with them, it's money well spent.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I don't think I mentioned when I was sharing what coaching is in my first podcast. But one of the foundations of it is confidentiality, right? So it's a safe space to have a conversation with an unbiased party around whatever it is that you got going on. So I love that. So a couple books that I just have on my top of mind, and you kind of touched on them. One, and I'm going to say more thought leaders than books, but you mentioned the Roosevelt in the arena.
Yeah.
So Brene Brown is the modern voice around a lot of that, which is vulnerability. So if you haven't checked out Brene Brown, she's got podcasts, books, Netflix series, all of those things. And then you mentioned Simon Sinek.
Yep.
These are kind of like the modern day
voices
when it comes to leadership. So Simon Sinek, his key one is start with why, right? And then you said David Brooks.
David Brooks, columnist, a great book. He's the one that just came out that I just give as a gift. I gift a lot of books so that I'm like just constantly handing these things out. Kim Scott's another great one.
Oh, yeah, Radical Candor.
Radical Candor.
And she has Radical Respect now.
Yeah, the radical theme is big time. I use the word radical in some of our themes for the year: radical hospitality, radical curiosity, and some other radical. But we're doing I feel
like you need to dress in like 80s gear. Radical.
Maybe be radical rocker. Maybe. I also like sort of behavioral economics kinds of books. Back to that leverage. I always believe in the point of leverage, and like how can you make these, like Nudge is another great book that I love. So things in that area that I find personally interesting that I can align with some of the stuff that I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so we have talked about Aaron's journey. We've talked about this concept of passion and purpose, and we wove into that authenticity. We've made some book recommendations, or at least thought leader recommendations. So those are more global thought leaders. We'll always end these episodes with our guests sharing local leaders that inspire them, all in the hopes that these might be future guests on the session, on our episodes. So Aaron, I want to turn it to you.
Sure.
You were going to think of 2 or 3 leaders here in the greater Richmond area that inspire you. Who comes to mind?
Casey, I really love this part of the podcast, and I think it's a wonderful idea to kind of elevate some of the voices around the community. And community for me is such a big part of what I just love about Richmond. There are 3 that came to mind after some thought around, trying to think about that they're different in different areas, but there might be something for your listeners to think about. One guy I met 2 years ago is named Mike King. Mike King is he has a business talk program on ESPN radio, but his whole ethos is connecting leaders and business leaders in the Richmond area. So he really likes to shine a spotlight on them. He's a phenomenal interviewer, and I think he does such a great job of really elevating parts of our community that might not get a lot of attention. So that's one guy. Somebody else I met a couple years ago who's now the publisher and president of the RTD, Richmond Times-Dispatch, and Lee Enterprises for Virginia is Kelly Till. Back to community. I think in the newspaper business, in the media realm today, it's there's so much going on and transforming. I think what she's done in terms of elevating and making the community the center, really raising community, shining a spotlight on some of the good news that's going on, is a really great thing, and I think very highly of her. And then lastly, this is a name that a lot of folks might recognize as Becky Massey.
Oh, yeah.
If you're familiar with the Massey Cancer Center, Becky is a tireless philanthropist and community engager. And if you've not met her, I hope your folks get to, because I think when I think of who is back to that George Bernard Shaw and John Wesley, like just using up all their energy and efforts on behalf of the community, she's somebody that comes to mind.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm excited to have the opportunity to potentially have those folks as guests. The big theme I heard in all three of them, which just once again, just gets at my heart, is community. And that's so much of what I want to do on this podcast too, is create community, introduce people to inspiring leaders around the area. And so thank you for being our first guest. And we'll be sharing in the comments how people can connect with you and learn more about you and learn more about FeedMore's.
Awesome.
So thanks you.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it.
Hey, listener, if you enjoyed today's session, take a moment and subscribe, or comment below. Especially leave a comment of a leader that inspires you here in Richmond that might be a great future guest. Also, if you're finding this session compelling and eager to learn more about yourself and your own leadership, don't hesitate to click into my website listed in the description and schedule a complimentary call. I'd love to learn more about you. Thank you.